My friend and I spent the night at a house in the countryside, and someone tried to break in. I'm a woman, and this happened when I was 20, in the early 2000s when landlines were common and mobile phones weren't widespread yet. It all happened in a small town about an hour from Sacramento. My friend was house sitting for a family she knew through church. The house was out in the country, with no neighbors nearby, just alfalfa fields, cows, and corn. The family had animals: cats, rabbits, a donkey, and a horse. They also had dogs, but the owners had taken them along. My friend was supposed to feed the animals and keep an eye on the place. The mailbox was a locked box at the end of a long driveway. She asked me to spend the night for company, and I thought it'd be fun. I just moved into my own apartment from my aunt and uncle's house and agreed to pick her up after work. We got there around 9:30 p.m., grabbed dinner on the way, and first fed the animals in the barn. They were clearly hungry. Then we went into the house, a single-story ranch-style place. The living room was to the left of the entrance, bedrooms and bathroom down a long hall to the right, dining room straight ahead, and kitchen to the left of that. A second hallway with several doors was connected to the kitchen. Those were daycare rooms the homeowner used for a private daycare business. We didn't even go there. We just ate, watched TV, and talked. When it got late, my friend armed the alarm system and said she never liked sleeping in other people's beds, so she'd sleep in one of the two big reclining chairs. She offered me the couch, but I picked one of the super comfy recliners instead. I wrapped myself in a blanket. We turned on the TV and chatted for a while in the dark. Suddenly, the motion sensor outside turned on the light, flooding the room. I still don't understand how people in rural areas live without curtains or blinds. Seems crazy to me. We froze, and Amanda said, "Maybe it's the wind?" Then we heard gravel crunching, like someone walking on the driveway. My recliner was near the window, and I slid to the floor, clutching my blanket. The light turned off, and Amanda dropped to the floor too. We lay there on our stomachs, not knowing what to do. Then there was a loud bang, the alarm went off, and the lights came on again. The noise was deafening. We covered our ears. I started to panic. I swear I'd never been that close to peeing myself from fear. I crawled toward the alarm panel, hoping there was a button that would call for help. The screen said, "Patio, one of two doors open." Amanda started sobbing and pressed the help button. Nothing happened. No response. I asked, "Where's the phone?" She said one was in the kitchen and the other in the master bedroom. We had to choose: go past the windows near the patio door or head down the hall to the parents' room. I asked where the second patio door was, and she said it was in the daycare area. So we chose the parents' room. It was pitch dark. I asked, "Where's the phone?" She said we'd have to turn on the light. I really didn't want to, but we had no choice. No flashlight. My cell was at home, and Amanda didn't even have one yet. She got one after this. She turned on the light, and we started looking. That's when we realized this house didn't have any curtains or even doors inside. Near the bed was a golf club, probably meant to be used like a bat, for protection. We figured that if someone got hit with a golf club, it would definitely leave a mark. Amanda grabbed the club, and we kept searching for the phone. We found the base of a cordless phone, but no handset. The alarm was still blaring, the lights were on, and all I could think about was that whoever had opened the patio door could see everything. Amanda asked, "Should I press the find handset button?" I looked at her and snapped, "Sure, if you want some creep to show up with the phone and say, 'Looking for this?'" I was scared and furious to be in this situation. We were just standing there, realizing we'd have to go to the kitchen, when suddenly the alarm shut off. That deep, rural silence returned. If you've lived in the country, you know the kind I mean. There were no more clubs, so I made Amanda go first, turning on every light as we passed and closing doors behind us. We checked the panel. It still said the patio was open. Pressed the help button again. Still no response. We checked that the front door was locked, then headed to the kitchen. I told her we had to check the patio door near the kitchen and grabbed a huge knife, not even a sharp one. We checked the door. It was locked. Turned on all the lights, picked up the phone, and dialed 911. Turned out the phone wasn't cordless, but one of those old wall-mounted ones. Amanda was on the line with the dispatcher, telling her what had happened. That's when I heard a whistle outside the kitchen window. People don't usually think about this, but when it's dark outside and your lights are on, the glass turns into a one-way mirror. You see yourself, but someone outside sees you perfectly. Unless you press your face to the glass, you won't see them. The whistle came again, like someone trying to get our attention, but I couldn't see anyone and sure wasn't about to get closer to the window to find out if they were whistling at me. Amanda was still talking to the dispatcher, crying, saying she didn't know the address. She handed me the phone and I said, "Hello?" The dispatcher sounded irritated and said she needed the address to send police. I asked her to trace the call, and she snapped something like, "You're house sitting and don't even know where you are?" Scared, furious, and shaken, I handed the phone back to Amanda and started frantically looking around the kitchen for anything with an address, junk drawer, countertops, fridge, while keeping an eye on the hallway leading to the daycare rooms. One of those doors was the open patio door. Amanda told the woman that they didn't check the mail. It was locked in a box at the end of the driveway. A few seconds later, she lowered the phone, looked at me with a blank expression, and I asked, "Are they tracing the call?" Amanda said quietly. She said, "Hope the cops find you in time," and hung up. I was both terrified and furious. We knew someone was outside. We knew the patio door in the daycare area was open, but we had no idea what to do. We stood frozen in the kitchen, in total silence. It felt like forever, though it was probably just a minute. I grabbed the phone and called 411. The operator told Amanda they should have the number of the local police. I calmly explained what was happening, told her about the unhelpful 911 dispatcher, and said we just needed to reach our town's police. That's when we heard a loud metallic crash outside the kitchen window by the patio door, like something heavy and metal had been dropped. Amanda burst into tears, and I couldn't hold it in either. I started crying too. I was sure the person outside was about to break the door down. The 411 operator said he'd connect us and stay on the line. He clearly wasn't happy with the 911 dispatcher. A police officer picked up, and the 411 operator started explaining everything. Then another whistle came from outside, and all the motion sensor lights around the house turned on again. I was too scared to look out. And we'd never turned on the patio lights. You had to pass right by the window, and we didn't want to be seen. We told the police officer about the whistling, and he said multiple officers were on their way and told us to stay on the line. Since we were outside city limits, we knew it would take a while. Talking to the officer calmed us down a bit, but I was still really scared. Then he said the police had arrived and were coming up the driveway. He told me to hang up and open the door, so I did, and saw a police pickup with spotlights scanning the pastures on both sides of the road. 2 officers, not with handguns but shotguns, were walking slowly alongside the truck. 4 officers reached the house and asked for our names. One picked up the phone, said they were on site, and hung up. They told us to stay in the dining room while they searched the house. One by one, they returned. The last came in through the kitchen patio door and said he'd checked the barn, said the horse startled him and looked scared too. He asked what other animals were in there. They told us they hadn't found anyone, but confirmed the daycare patio door had been unlocked. The track had a mop handle jammed in to prevent the door from opening too wide. I looked at the patio door the officer had come through and felt dumb. There was no one out there. The cops scolded Amanda for not knowing the address of the house she was watching, and for something else I don't remember. After we gave our statements, they said they'd stay a while longer and inspect the property again. If we wanted, we could leave with them. We got out of there instantly, got in my car, and drove to Amanda's mom's house. Emotionally drained, we fell asleep quickly. I went to work at my office job in the morning. Amanda said she didn't want to go back to that house at all, but the animals needed feeding. Her mom told her to take her sisters, so she did. That afternoon, Amanda called me at work. She was clearly shaken and said that when they entered the house, there were muddy boot prints on the carpet. I said it was probably one of the cops who had gone to the barn. She said she didn't know, hadn't noticed, and then added that when they went out to feed the animals, they found all the rabbits with their legs tied together. The family had 10 rabbits for the daycare. Amanda said there was a note nearby that said, "Lucky ones," scrawled on the back of a pizza coupon wrapper. She figured the coupon was from the fridge. One was missing. It took them a while to untie all the rabbits. After that, Amanda asked her mom to find someone from church to take over watching the house. She wasn't going back. She also told the police about what they found that morning, but no one was ever found, and the police never contacted us again. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comments. Now, on to the next one. Left alone in a house in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Around 1992, I was in high school. Unlike most of my classmates who worked at McDonald's, malls, or local shops, I was good with my hands and worked odd jobs doing flooring, minor construction, and car repairs. All my gigs were under the table. I started at 14. It was a win-win. I only worked evenings and weekends when needed. One of my employers did remodels for restaurants, bars, and commercial spaces, work that could only be done after hours. It fit perfectly with my school schedule. Sometimes I'd go to school during the day and head to a job site afterward. This guy would often leave me alone with a to-do list, usually for demolition tasks, while his crew handled the installation or finish work. Even though I was a teen, I'd earned their respect. I did my job without complaints and worked alongside adults. I was paid well, and in one night, I could earn more than my friends made in a week at McDonald's. One day, this employer called and said he had a job for me the following Saturday. I agreed, and he warned me to bring food and plenty of water because there was nothing nearby. I had a small portable cooler that I filled with soda, chips, and a couple of sandwiches. Back then, I could eat a whole pizza alone and burn off the calories without issue. That Saturday, he picked me up in the morning since I didn't yet have a car or a driver's license. He used to drive me to job sites and leave me there alone because he rarely had me work with his main crews. Those guys handled more complex work. I was just the demolition guy. And that's where my biggest mistake in this story starts. I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too caught up in the conversation. I think we were talking about cars. My goal then was to save up and buy an old muscle car to restore myself. The drive took a long time. We ended up in the middle of nowhere. It might seem like there aren't places like that in California, but in the early 90s, the Mojave Desert was full of plots with houses far apart from each other. I remember we turned off the highway and kept driving on different two-lane roads. He asked if I brought water and handed me a large water jug from his truck. It looked like it had been rolling around there for ages. He told me to take it just in case because there was no water in the house where I'd be working. When we got to the site, he was in a hurry to unload tools and head to another job. So I helped unload crowbars, shovels, a hammer, a broom, several large trash bins, and the tool bag I always kept with me. He said he'd be back around 5 or 6 p.m. since the place didn't have electricity, and according to him, that would give me enough time to finish. That was his usual way of saying, "I'm only paying you until then, so get it done." But his expectations were never unreasonable, and we always understood each other well when it came to tasks and deadlines. He left, and I was alone at the property. I went inside the house, which was almost empty. My job was to haul out the remaining furniture, belongings, and appliances, rip up all the flooring, fully tear out the kitchen and bathrooms, and remove the wood paneling. The house was going to be remodeled and sold. These days, they'd call it a flip, buying a rundown property, fixing it up, and reselling it. Almost immediately, I felt uneasy. Something about the house was just off. Keep in mind, I was used to working alone at sites, sometimes all night, but this was a bright Saturday afternoon. Still, the house was old, dark, musty, and cool. So cool it gave me goosebumps. To give you a sense of the vibe, imagine stepping into the 1960s, or even earlier. Dark green carpet everywhere, pine wood with dark stains, wood paneling. The curtains looked like someone's grandma had sewn them. The sink, stovetop, and oven were avocado green. There was old furniture left behind, and even a closet full of old stuffed animals, at least 30 years old. The whole style felt like an old ranch. I had a little battery-powered radio that only picked up a couple of stations, but I was happy just to have the static. I started hauling junk out of the house. As usual, if there wasn't a dumpster nearby, I piled everything into one spot. Then I pulled up all the flooring. Luckily, it came up easily. I ripped, cut, and tossed it out. Then I grabbed the sledgehammer, and in an hour tore apart the entire kitchen. I used the water from that big jug the boss gave me to wash my face and cool down throughout the day. By midday, as anyone who's worked in the desert knows, the dry air started pulling moisture right out of my body, especially since I was working hard. By the end of the day, I had only one drink left from the cooler, and all the food was gone. I wasn't worried. I figured the guys would be there to pick me up soon. By the time they were supposed to arrive, I had finished everything, even swept the whole house. It was completely ready for renovation and to be turned into a modern home. The weather hadn't been too hot for the desert, but as soon as the sun started setting, it got cold fast. I only had a flannel shirt, which wasn't nearly enough, and it was starting to get dark. This was before everyone had a cell phone. There was no electricity, no water, no signal. I climbed onto the roof to look around and try to spot anything in the distance. A few kilometers away, I saw where the dirt road from the house led to another smaller road and a few scattered houses, but they were all in darkness. My first thought was to walk to the nearest house and ask to use a phone, but that house turned out to be empty, looking long abandoned. If you remember, the early 90s were marked by economic recession, and there were whole areas full of foreclosed homes the banks had taken. I had worked on places like that before. At that point, I started thinking through my options as it got darker fast. First, stay in the house till morning. Second, walk several kilometers through the dark Mojave night with only a little water. Third, wait until dawn, then set off looking for civilization. And then it hit me. No one but my boss knew where I was. I wasn't sure if he'd told anyone. My family definitely wouldn't notice I was missing until Sunday evening. I hadn't even told them I was working that day. They knew I was grinding hard to save up for a car, and didn't worry if I didn't come home right away. Once it got completely dark, the sky overhead turned incredibly beautiful. Thankfully, the moon was bright. I didn't have a flashlight, and no way to start a fire. I did try to build a small fire from scraps of demolition debris, since the temperature was dropping fast, probably into the low 40s. My only option was to return to the empty, creepy house, which felt even scarier in the dark. Around 8 p.m., my radio, the only source of light and sound, started to die as the batteries ran out. I grabbed an old wooden chair and sat in the living room, staring at the front door. The wind picked up. I began to hear strange noises, probably animals off in the distance, I thought. There was also the sound of rustling leaves, like someone was walking through them. I started shivering from the cold and went over to the fireplace, hoping I could light something. Imagine a scene like Tom Hanks in Cast Away. At least it distracted me from thinking about how bad my situation was. Sitting near the fireplace, I felt like the house was even more terrifying than it had been during the day. And it had already been eerie in daylight. Now, with only the moonlight, I was sitting in near total darkness. My brain started playing tricks on me. I thought I saw shadows moving outside the window, and even inside the house. I imagined whispers, like someone talking quietly. I jumped up from the chair and shouted, "Hey!" Right after that, I heard something fall in another part of the house. I bolted outside. In the moonlight, I could see better. In the distance, I heard noises and saw movement, but couldn't make anything out clearly. I ran to the pile of tools by the wall, grabbed the heavy pry bar I'd used for the demolition, and prepared to defend myself against whatever or whoever. I had to keep moving constantly, since a t-shirt and flannel shirt weren't enough to stay warm. The wind was picking up, and as far as the eye could see, there wasn't a single light anywhere. I didn't want to climb onto the roof again, but I was afraid of falling in the dark, so I climbed onto the gate to try and spot any lights from houses or car headlights. Different stories about the Mojave Desert started popping into my head, about how people come here to bury bodies, how there are satanic cults, and how people disappear without a trace. Every sound made me tense, and each shadow made my heart beat faster. I knew no one was in the house, but I swear I heard noises coming from inside. I huddled on the porch, staring at the living room window, waiting for any sign of someone inside. Around 1 o'clock, I looked at the clock and thought, "This is going to be a long night." All these strange things only started happening when it got dark. I couldn't figure out how I was going to make it another 6 hours until dawn. I decided that as soon as I saw the first hint of light on the horizon, I would take what little water I had left and head east. I knew that direction would lead me to a paved road. By midnight, I sat wide-eyed, not taking my eyes off the road, hoping a car would come by and maybe help me. At some point, I turned around automatically toward the house because all this time, I'd been hearing noises, convincing myself it was just a rat or some other animal. And then I saw a silhouette of a person moving from the kitchen into the hallway. I jumped up. My heart dropped into my stomach. It wasn't an animal, it was a person. I began to back away toward my pile of tools, but I tripped over some debris and fell. I tried to get up, but fell again, as though something had pushed me, or maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Suddenly, a bright light got closer while I was still on the ground. I jumped up. It was my boss. He looked at me like, "What are you doing here?" I was so relieved to see him that I didn't feel angry or irritated. I just asked what had happened. He apologized and said he thought another crew was coming to pick me up, and they, in turn, thought he was coming for me. In the end, no one had come. Only late in the evening did he ask the foreman how I was doing, and the foreman replied, "I didn't go for him." So my boss had to come himself. The drive took almost 2 hours. He felt guilty and promised to pay me for all the time I'd spent on the job. Then he pulled out a can of Coke and asked if I wanted a drink. I downed the can in one go. When we got to civilization, he stopped at a fast food place, and I ate like I hadn't eaten in a week. On the way home, I asked him about the house and how creepy it was. He said he didn't know anything about the house, just the task we were supposed to do. After that incident, I always made sure to bring spare batteries, a flashlight, and twice as much water. Story 3. I still get chills when I think about it. A couple of years ago, in the fall or early winter of 2019, we were living at my husband's father's house. A few months later, we rented a house and moved out, but at that time, it had been less than a week since we moved in there. I was sleeping in the living room on an air mattress with our kids aged 10, 5, and 1. The kitchen, dining room, and living room formed one large open space. A wide counter with a sink separated the kitchen from the living room. From the living room side, it acted like a bar counter, but there were never any stools. My father-in-law always placed a couch there. On the kitchen side of the counter, there was space for storing dishes and other things. On either side of the counter, there was about 1.2 to 1.5 meters left before the walls. On the wall opposite the front door, there were 3 doors. From left to right, they led to my father-in-law's bedroom, the bathroom, and the guest room. My husband slept on a small bed in the guest room. His father kept the door to his own room closed, and his TV was usually on, along with either a heater, an air conditioner, or at least one fan, depending on the weather. I don't remember whether the door to the room where my husband was sleeping was open or closed at night. Apart from that wall with doors, the house had windows all around the perimeter. The huge floor-to-ceiling windows at the front and long sliding windows along each side wall of the house were originally designed as a vacation or hunting cabin. The idea was that big windows meant a beautiful view. Apparently, my father-in-law didn't like that idea, so he started building a porch and closing off parts of the windows with walls. But at that time, the porch wasn't built yet, and none of the windows had been covered or replaced. That night, I was holding the youngest, who was 18 months old, and the other 2 children were lying next to us. We had all been asleep for a while. Then I suddenly woke up. I don't know what time it was, but the house was quiet, and everyone was still asleep. I lay still for a while, unable to figure out why I had woken up, especially feeling so alert. After a moment, I thought it was just a sleep phase. It happens sometimes. I was about to fall back asleep when suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. Not frantic, but definitely knocking. The inflatable mattress was in the middle of the living room, and the front door was on the kitchen side behind the counter. I really didn't want to open the door for many reasons. I was lying among the 3 sleeping children. It was nighttime and cold, and we were comfortably curled up together. This wasn't my house, and these weren't my guests. And it seemed that no one else in the house had noticed the knocking. The knock continued longer than I would have expected anyone to knock at a stranger's door in the middle of the night, and it became more persistent, but it never turned into loud banging. No one called, no phone rang. Then I heard footsteps on the unfinished porch. There were piles of boards, tools, and other stuff against the walls. I didn't hear any crashing or anything like that, but I could tell someone was walking around, stepping over the building materials. Then, there was a clear, persistent tapping on the window right where we were lying with the children. There was a small, old TV and a stereo system next to the window, sitting on 2 small nightstands. I was lying with my back to the window, but the tapping was right near our heads. The whole wall was made of windows, but only the part right in front of me, if I had been facing the window, was being tapped. I don't think I took a single breath until the tapping stopped, and I heard the footsteps move away, across the 10 sheets, all the way to the end of the porch, to where the driveway was. Walking on 10 sheets makes a very distinct sound. I know exactly what it sounds like when someone walks on metal, but only the next morning did I realize that the only 10 sheets there were on the roof above the porch. They had been placed there to cover the porch before construction stopped for the night. This meant that under the window, among the boards, tools, and other debris, there were no 10 sheets. The only way to walk on the metal sheets which I absolutely heard someone walking on after the long knocks and tapping that had made me uneasy, was to jump or somehow climb onto the roof of the house or the unfinished porch, then jump off from the other side. This terrifies me more than anything else in my life. I'm still scared every time I accidentally remember it. Well, that's all for now. Please write your own scary stories in the comments, if you have any. I think everyone has been in similar situations. I remember something like this happened when I was at my grandmother's village, and someone knocked on the window at night. We never opened it. Grandma called the police, but they never came. Thank God, the guy who was knocking left. But we were all really scared. Thanks for watching this video until the end. Let me know if you like these kinds of scary stories. Good luck.